everybody. Sorry you had to stare at my booty for the last 10 minutes. I didn't really mean for that to happen. There's no like behind the curtain kind of thing. But good morning. I'm so happy to be here in Atlanta. Some of you know me from way back in the day, years and years and years of coming here for Bronner Brothers. I love Atlanta, and I haven't been able to come to Atlanta that much at all, so I'm really happy to be with you guys. I'm happy for all the, like I couldn't even walk in the building. I think I had like 150 hugs already, so it's completely made my day. So thank you so much, and thank you for being here for this presentation. So, for those of you who know me, you know I'm really shy. So if you don't talk to me the whole time, I might pass out. So anything you want to say, even if you want to scream it out, if you have a question, go for it. Okay, is that fair? Awesome. So step one, you saw, I'm just going to straighten out your chair a little bit, okay? Awesome. Was to think about the skin before you even get started. What do you want the skin to do? I could have just went and just jumped in and just started putting some foundation on her. But what have you learned when you do makeup? Yeah, how you start is how you're gonna end. So if I don't prep her skin and make it super, super hydrated, I can't like magically think at the end, oh my God, her skin is so beautiful and dewy and looks like skin. It's just not gonna happen. So you have to take the time in the beginning of your application with intention, think about how do you want this skin to look. Like I'm all about dewy, glowy right now, so I want to keep her skin super radiant. So radiance is on my mind throughout this entire application, and it starts with her skin. So I just use a face mask, a hydrating face mask, and that's something that I always do, no matter who the model is, because it just helps the skin to receive the makeup better. How many of you do that face mask before you start? Okay, awesome. All right, so next I'm going to infuse some oil. Now, back in the day, I was Miss Matte. I wasn't putting anything wet or dewy or textured or oily on anybody's skin because it was scary to me. The makeup that I learned to do was super matte makeup. But now, I realize that if you don't create variety in your makeup, you won't get variety in your work either, right? So I'm always working to push the envelope and do things a little different. And I found that when you use oil, it kind of changes everything. It's going to change the way all your products in your kit work. Right now, I'm going to be using the Danessa Myricks Beauty Oil as a base. Now, I hear often people say, oh, why are you using oil? What if the person's skin is oily? How many of you have that feeling that if you use oil, that the makeup is going to be super oily at the end? So I used to be that person too, but what I've learned is using oil, and not just any oil, this particular oil is a drier oil, so it doesn't make the skin oily. It makes the skin just really soft and supple, and it makes it receive the makeup in such more of a beautiful way. But when I use oil, I find that I use a lot less makeup, number one, and I also find that the makeup wears a lot better. And for people who are super oily, because we're using an oil, and this oil mimics the sebum on the skin, it keeps them from producing more oil, if that makes sense. So this is the Danessa Myricks Beauty Oil, and it's a dry oil. It's a blend of 9 different oils. Okay. All right, so that's my step one. And now I'm going to think about, all right, in the end, I know for a fact that I need for her cheekbones to pop. I want her face to be super, super sculpted and contoured. So I'm thinking, how can I do that? And generally, my thought process is, where can I bring light onto the face? So as you know, when you shade an area lighter, it's going to bring that area forward. But our eyes and the camera's eyes always see what shaded light is first, right? So the lighter areas, for the most part, create the shape of the face. So I'm always using reflection to create shape. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. So in order for me to do that, I am going to underpaint all of those highlights that I want to see on the skin. Do you guys know what I mean when I say underpaint? Okay, what does it mean? Yeah, putting everything underneath. Perfect. So, and sometimes I'll use more than one shade. Like I'm gonna try, I never use this, I'm gonna use Attraction. So I'm using a tone that's close to her skin tone, but this is gonna be a little bit cooler than her skin, which is fine. That's a good question. So I'm always, did you guys hear her question? Okay, so she's basically asking, like, am I highlighting and contouring the whole time? Is that kind of what you said? Say it again. Let me let her say it. She said it way better than what I just did.
I said, like, when you're doing the underneath method, are you
Yes.
saying, like, are you contouring and highlighting and then applying the foundation? Or
Yes.
Are you, okay.
Yep. I'm always thinking about shape. This is why I don't really care what color I make her. The only thing that matters to me is that her body matches her face. So if I change the tone of her face, I want to bring it onto the body, and vice versa. I can bring the tone of her body onto the face, right? But I'm always thinking about shape. Shape even more so than color. Let me see. This one is a little bit pink. Okay. So I'm gonna use 3 shades to underpaint for her. I often work in 3s. If you guys follow me at all, you'll see that I'm always focused on the number 3. Because for me, when you work in 3s, you're not only creating contrast, but you're really creating dimension. It's more than just contrast between 2 tones or 2 textures. The third color or the third texture always makes a difference, in my opinion. Okay, so right on top of her cheekbones, at the very top, I use a shade of this illuminating veil in Radiance. And Radiance is like a light gold. And I'm using that at the very, very top. Now you should be able to see as I'm working some change to the shape. I can't see what you're seeing because I'm back here, but so you can see where I'm pushing it right here at the very, very top. Because I want all the attention at the end to go to the very tops of her cheekbones. Does that make sense? I'll add a little bit here down the bridge of the nose. And I'll add some to her chin. The chin is an area that can often get lost, especially when you're working with somebody with a little bit of hyperpigmentation. So I'm always making sure that that chin comes forward. Because it's kind of like playing connect the dots. Can you see how the lighter areas are creating the shape? Okay, so that's my first tone I'm going to use there. Then I'm going to use a tone called Attraction that has a little bit more of a pinky gold tone to it, and it's a little bit cooler. I'm going to put that immediately underneath. Now this formula is a water-based formula, so it plays well with everything. It's not only going to set this highlight underneath, but it's also going to help set the makeup that I use on top. Okay, here. You notice that these tones are tones that you can kind of find in her body if you look closely at her arms. So these second tones I'm just bringing up to meet that first tone. And this is just helping me just diffuse any hard lines, because we're blending all the way through. So there's a nice blend between these 2 tones. And like the second tone almost disappears. Do you see a difference between here and here? You're like, whatever she says. I don't know if you can see it on camera. I hope you can. So the lightest is closest to the top of the cheek. And this is the second tone. And then the third tone is going to be a little bit richer. This tone is called Queen. And I'm going to use that as her underpainting of contour, but it's going to be a contour with a little bit of illumination. So this way I know no matter what I put on top, everything is going to have a bit of reflection. But it's also going to have the depth that I need in those areas. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. So can you see that I'm shaping all the way throughout the process? So even in my underpaint, I'm creating shape. So someone might say, you know what? she can kind of do her whole face like this. And I've actually done full on complexion with only highlighters before. And that can happen because the tones are still helping me to create shape. Can you guys see that? Okay. So this is all underneath. Before I do anything, I always use my fingers. My fingers are my favorite tool. There's no brush on the planet. There's no sponge, in my opinion, that replaces fingers. Because when you use your fingers, you're really melting the product into the skin. Okay. So you can see how all of those disappeared, but the shape is still there. And that's the same process that I'm going to use throughout the entire application. With every product that I use, whether it's foundation, powder, highlighter, I'm always keeping the shape in mind. Okay, so ask me questions. Yeah, so for me, if somebody has mature skin, then I'm always making them, I'm being conscious of their pores and fine lines, but I'm always bringing in some level of reflection. It's just going to be a little bit more strategic. Because as I get older, I'm learning that when your skin is matte, the matte takes away the look of youth, right? The more radiance you can bring into the skin, the more youthful the person is going to look. So I don't want to take that away. So if someone has a lot of texture or they have pores, I'm doing everything underneath. So the foundation is what's going to be on top, but everything else is going to peek through. So I can use the exact same strategy, but when I'm done, they're still going to be radiant, okay? Also, the powders that I use are very, very super sheer, and you'll see in a little bit. All right, so now I want to move on to her complexion. Okay, just making sure that's balanced. So I'm just thinking about shape right now. My goal is to do a big, wet, smoky, glossy eye. So I want most of the focus to be there and around the eye, and I want to kind of get rid of everything else. So in order to do that, I'm going to be a little bit more contrasty in the tones that I use. I'm actually going to go a lot deeper right now. So the complexion product that I'm going to be using is called Vision Cream Cover. And this particular formula has silicone, oil, and wax in it. And because of that, it plays well with everything. It's a concentrate, so a little bit goes a long way. So I'm always infusing oils or whatever I prep the skin with the product. And I'm actually going to add a little bit more dimension by infusing a little bit of reflection into this as well. So because she's very yellow, I'm going to add a golden oil to it. This is a Love and Light oil. I'm going to put a little bit on my palette so I can infuse it into all of my colors. So if I can show you this without it spilling, yeah, let me just do that. All right, so these are all the tones I'm going to be using, and if you see it against her body, can you see where all of these tones show up someplace on her? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shades on my palette right now. So I have some oil on my brush. I'm going into my very deepest tone. And why do you think I went to my deepest tone right now? Right, because I'm thinking about shape, so I just want to get rid of everything that I want gone by the time I'm done. And I'm going to do all that shaping right now. Excuse me. Ask me questions.
Folks, if you do have questions.
Because that brush was very much, I love that question. There was a lot of oil on the brush, and I wanted to have more of a, who said that? More concentration in color. So if I use this without the oil, I'm going to get more pigmentation right in this area without shearing it out. That was a great question. Okay, so you see how I'm shaping as I go? But I'm doing this with a lot of intention because I already know what the end result is. And I think that that's one of the biggest things as artists we need to think about always in our application. Working with intention, understanding where you want to end up so you can make very definitive choices throughout your application that make sense, so when you're done you get there. I know for me, I used to kind of just put makeup on people until it looked good. And then I'm like, okay, this is enough. There was really no plan to it. But now I work a lot differently.
What kind of brush did you change to? Is that a duo fiber?
Yeah, I just used, thank you. I just used the dual fiber brush where the hairs are a little bit more variegated because it's going to give me a better spread. It's going to shear out the coverage. And that's what I mean, like making those choices as you work, paying attention to the details. And especially when you're talking about work that's going to be photographed, all those details make a big, big difference. It kind of depends. It depends on the model. Like sometimes, her question was, do I do skin first and then eyes or vice versa? Before I used to focus on doing the eyes first because I was using products that have fallout. So, I mean, it just makes it faster and easier when you don't, when you do the eyes first. But now it kind of really doesn't matter. It just depends on what helps me to see the final look better. And sometimes, especially if you're doing something that's a little bit more dramatic or different than the person's natural structure, it's kind of nice to see the shape first because then you're just filling in the blanks, right? So it really just depends. That's a great question. So can you see what I'm doing? I'm kind of just shaping, going along her jawline, making sure I hit the ears. And now that I'm here by her neck, I'm just using that brush that had the excess oil on it just to tint her skin here so that this all works together. Does that make sense? Especially when you're talking about work to be photographed, you do not want to forget about the ears and the neck. All right, there we go. So we see this all flows together now, right? So right now I'm still just shaping.
Say, for instance, you're on like a time crunch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you take the same procedures, or are there shortcuts that you use?
I do the same thing all the time because the shortcut is only going to mean that I'm not getting the full results of what I want. I just work faster. Or I can do all of these things. Who asked the question? Sorry. Okay. I can do all of these same things just on top. So maybe I'll just infuse some pearl into the foundation, put it all over, and then use everything on top to work faster. It kind of really just depends. But, you know, it's going to take, I can use as much time as somebody gives me. Somebody gives me 2 hours, I'll use all of it. If somebody gives me an hour and a half, I'm going to use all of it. If somebody gives you 10 minutes, then you really got to focus. And you're going to use those 10 minutes wisely, right? So in that situation, if I know I'm working in a scenario where people are always going to promise me a lot of time and then really not give it to me, I do all the most important things first. Like, as an example, if it's Fashion Week, and the whole focus of this look is the lip, I'm doing that first. And then I'm going to go and do the skin. Like whatever I know is going to be the most important thing, I just start there.
So because you do photography as well, with tying it into your makeup, how you start is how you finish. So do you automatically see where you're going so you know how you want to photograph your model?
So for instance, that's a really great question. So I found that being and I use that term photographer loosely. If you ask me anything technical about my camera, I can tell you nothing. I really just focus on the light. What I found is as I photograph my work, I become a better, in my opinion, makeup artist, like a smarter makeup artist, right? Because it's really different when you're critiquing your work on that many levels up close. And now I understand why sometimes I'm just not going to use any foundation at all because of the type of photography that I'm going to be doing. It's very macro. I'm just going to make better choices in the model. And sometimes I'm going to put a lot more coverage, but do it in a way that still looks like skin. But I know based on how I'm going to be shooting it, it needs to change. And then I also have strategies where regardless of what the lighting is, I want it to work, and I use those then. But I didn't narrow down on all of those things until I started actually shooting it myself, seeing how the light really affects the final image. And so I know I can kind of walk into any set and see the type of lighting that they have set up, and then I kind of know how I need to do my makeup, right? And you guys know that too. Like if you walk on set and somebody's using like a softbox, what does that normally mean? Yeah, it's just diffusing everything. Things are gonna be softer. So I may bump things up a little bit in that scenario. Or if somebody's using like a beauty dish or a much harder light, then I know I need to be very, very careful with texture, because you're gonna see everything. So I may use more powder than I normally do just to smooth things out. So those are the kinds of things I learned as I started shooting. So all I'm doing right now is just amplifying all of those same highlighted areas, and you see I'm mixing a little here. I still want the warmth, but I want it to be brighter here in the inside of her face, so I'm just paying attention to that as I work. I also want to brighten this area around her eye, because the eye that I'm going to do is going to be really, really dark. So I want as much contrast as possible. And I want to get as much contrast around this, her cheeks.
When you say, talking about the skin looking more skin-like, is that more in technique or is it more reliant on product?
Can you say that a little louder? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. When you're talking about, making the skin look more skin-like, even though you're using more product, is that more technique or is that more reliant on the product that you're choosing?
I think it's
to
a
use?
combination of both, and I think that's a great question. Like, when I think about how somebody's skin should look, I think about babies. And I think about how very youthful, young girls look, how their skin looks. And that's what I really want to mimic. So you don't have babies waking up matted down, right? They just have this little pretty natural glow to them. What I've learned is that it's important to see the skin as much as possible. And where you have to use a lot more coverage, you want to make sure that you mimic the look of natural skin, which is why I'm always infusing oils and adding reflection, because it helps create the illusion of youth. And if I powder her down completely, she's going to look flat, right? So I can use light, and I use that term very loosely because I can use light in bringing it through the foundation. I can use light bringing it in through matte powders, or light physically using things that are reflective to bring life to the face. And that's really what I'm thinking about. That's the idea of dimension also is there as well, because nobody is like flat, like a circle walking towards you. There's highs and lows, right? So you want to take a dimensional approach even to your application, so when you're done, they still have those natural highlights and shadows there, that you didn't kind of flatten everything out, because that looks unnatural and that doesn't look like skin. Make sense? Keep asking me questions. I'm much more interested in answering questions, trust me. Okay, go for it.
Danessa, I love you, number one, over here. Number two, what kind of light are you working with when you're doing makeup?
So I'm obsessed with glam core lights, and I know there's big debates on light period, just getting good light. Let's just start there. But I really also focus on really curating the light for the model that's in the chair and for the environment that they're going to be shooting in. And so for me, knowing that I'm not going to shoot her in a very cool lighting environment, because her skin is really warm and beautiful, and I'm going to want to bring that out. So I like being able to adjust the light on set. I like understanding like what the final look is going to be and how it's going to be shot, and doing the makeup under that light. So I really love the glam cores for that reason, because I can adjust the temperature. The Multimedia Pro is the one that I use most often. In my studio, I have like the Fortune and Fame mirror, a ton of multimedia lights. I just really like that light. The only time where I'm not going to use that is if you're doing makeup for like outside, then you kind of want to, as much as possible, do it in like daylight. So I'll balance it to daylight or go to a window, whatever makes the most sense. That's a great question.
So I've noticed that you haven't used any sponges like beauty blenders. So do you prefer?
Can you talk a little louder? I'm sorry.
I noticed that you haven't used any sponges. You just use brushes and
Okay.
fingers. So do you prefer using
Um,
brushes over beauty blenders, and why?
So for me, sponges, I mean, I love everything. I don't dislike anything. I just think about the tool that I'm using and how it aligns with the final look that I'm creating. So, and what I'm doing at the moment and the area that I'm working in. Sponges take makeup off. So for me, like applying with a sponge sometimes is counterintuitive for me because it's taking it off as I'm putting it on. So I tend to use sponges a lot when I'm either blending, I want to remove something. That's when a sponge will come into play. But for the most part, I like using my hands and or a brush. If I pick up a sponge, that means I'm trying to get rid of something. Okay. Okay. And now my secret's out. You're gonna know every time I make a mistake, I pick up a sponge.
Hi, Danessa.
Who's
right
that?
Here, right here. I'm Kamala.
Oh, hi.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Kamala. So I had a question about undertones and how you choose the undertones of the contour, highlight, foundation shades in comparison to like the model's undertone, how you make that work. Like I've worked under some artists who might go for a more red undertone contour color if the model has yellow undertones. So I just wanted your take on that.
I mean, I just let the body give me clues. So it can work two different ways for me. It could be me trying to force something, or it could be me just taking the clues that the body is already given. And I think the easiest way to do it is to look at the body and let the body give you clues. Like I can look at her right now and know exactly what I need to pick up. Like if I want to shade her and I look at the edges of her body, this needs to match this, needs to match this, right? So that's all I do. So she's more warm here, it's more red, and it's deeper, and that's what I'm going to use here. I know that obviously when you're doing shading, you want to mimic a shadow, and shadows aren't warm. I know that whole thing, but I also want my model to look alive. And if I make it too gray on some complexions, it's just going to look dead and dirty and muddy. So I know I need to add a little bit more life to it. So for me, a lot of it is kind of common sense. Just go with what you know. Go what's there. Just use your eyes and your intuition. You'll know when it's just not right. On fairer skin tones, obviously, you definitely want to go more gray, more neutral, because that same warmth isn't coming through on the skin all over. You know what I mean? Did that answer your question? Okay.
Hi, Danessa.
Hey.
Hey, for someone who hasn't or who would like to introduce some of your products into their makeup kit,
Just buy everything. I'm just kidding.
What are some of the starters that you would recommend?
Well, I think what's most important always is complexion, right? Because everything else, quite honestly, is filling in the blanks. It's really about how you get that skin to look. So I would definitely start with the foundation and the powder, for sure.
Going back to what you talked about in terms of tones and balancing, do you have any specific tips regarding hyperpigmentation that's like distinct between the base color of the face and then what you're balancing in with your highlight shades? Would you go cooler in some areas and warmer in others to neutralize that before you put your base on?
It honestly just depends on the person. It's hard to answer in a blanket because I need to see the person.
Just the tones?
Yeah. I know we like to have rules, and rules are important, but sometimes they stifle us too. And everyone always wants a hard answer. Should a contour be cool or warm? What's the answer? Should it, and it's really not so much like that because there's so many like micro details in between all of that. So I think you have to just look at the person's face. Like, can you see how I'm just mimicking tones that are in her body?
Yeah.
So it's just easier that way.
So you would say probably between 3 to 5 tones, just pick those that...
You said 3 to 5 tones?
Yeah.
I'm extra. You don't have to do 3 to 5. I like to say just more than one.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you were talking about 3 earlier.
Yeah,
So
I like 3.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
But,
That's cool.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And it really depends on the products that you're using, too. Because sometimes you're mixing just to get the tones perfect. So it really depends. I think the biggest thing is to stop looking at the application as a consumer. You know, a regular consumer is going to go and say, what's my shade, match me, and that's fine, because that's what they're supposed to do, but you're an artist, right? So you're looking at this completely different. So there's more than just black and white, yes and no, yellow or red. There's all that other stuff in between. So you want to consider all those things. Okay.
Hey, Danessa.
Hey.
So I'm with my favorite photographer today, Elvis Pedra, and we absolutely love your photography. So
Thank you.
when you have your photography hat on, what is your favorite lighting system that you use to make sure like you get the highest glow in your photos?
That's a good question. Well, I think one light is really all you need, to be honest. I only use like multiple lights if I want to make changes to the background or if I'm trying to like contour the face from behind. I'm really mostly focused on that one main light. I like using harder lights. I'm not a softbox kind of gal because, again, the softboxes take away from the texture a little bit, but it really just depends on the model. Like if the model has textured skin, you need to act accordingly. But I'm usually using a harder light with the silver in the inside over white. Almost everything that I use is silver in the inside. And I just play with the reflector. Like, you know, if I put a gold reflector under her, she's gonna look very different than if I use a silver or a white. So I usually just take my first shot and then adjust accordingly. But it's usually just one light. I use the Pro Photo lights. Okay. I can't see her. Does she look okay? Okay. Like, I can't, you know, I need to be standing in front of her, and I really can't, because then you'll be looking at my booty. Yeah. So I use the Pro Photo lights. My main light modifier that I use is the Mola SETI. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a big giant light. And it's circular, and it has like little waves on the side that helps to balance the light so it hits the face really softly. Okay. All right. Are we okay there? And let me just check this side. You know I'm going to watch the playback, and if you lie to me, I'm going to be so upset. Okay. Okay. So what I'm always looking to see is what she looks like from every angle, because when somebody gets on set, they're shooting everything. So behind the neck, does this all come together? Does this all come together? That's why I like using my fingers, because I think tapping just seals the deal on everything. It just brings everything together. So I'm going to go to the eye and then finish off the skin. So I'm going to try and work fast because I never finish, so I can actually finish. So the same idea of shaping is always on my mind. So because she's going to have a very dark, smoky eye, I have a lot more flexibility, but I still want to frame out her eye. I'm going to be using Color Fix to do that. How many of you have played with Color Fix? Amazing. Okay, just tell me you love it. All right, good. It's my favorite product in the whole world because it really is that everything product. You can use it on eyes, lips, cheeks. You can infuse this into your foundation. I literally can bring this right onto her skin and work it into her foundation. It's that everything product.
Hi there. I have a question going back.
Oh, okay.
Going back
You
to
can tell my
skin-
sense of hearing is not really good. I can't tell where anyone's talking from. Okay, go ahead.
Going back to the skin really quickly, with the amount of product that we tend to use, how can you avoid creasing around your client or your model's mouth?
Did you say how can you avoid creasing around the eye?
Avoid creasing around the mouth.
Around the mouth. I think all of that creasing comes from using too much product. Using too much product and using too much powder. Because if somebody already has lines there and you're using powders that sit on top of the skin, it's going to only accentuate that. So I think you get rid of that by A, using a lot less product, B, blending is the other thing, and also using different textures on the complexion brings that out too. So just to give you an example, oftentimes you may say, oh, I have my correctors and they're one texture, and then I have my, my adjusters, it's another texture, and then I have my concealer and it's another texture. And we're using all those different things in different areas of the face. It's really easy to find demarcation lines when you do that. And it brings attention to all those things that you're trying to cover. So I find using this similar texture throughout helps that too, so that you don't get that separation. When you're using your powders, melting the powders into the skin, using a damp sponge to apply the powders also helps too. Okay, so you see how I just took that tone and I'm bringing it everywhere. I'm bringing it into the complexion. Color Fix is a waterproof product. So once you put it there, it sets. And it sets like for real. It's not going to move ever until you want to take it off. But you see, you also have a lot of playtime as well. But I want to get that same color everywhere because that helps in creating dimension as well. Being able to mimic tones all throughout the face. So I'm just using this to just shape her eye.
Danessa, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What's the advantage of doing the underpainting versus doing the contouring and highlighting on top of the foundation?
For me, I think the best makeup is when you mimic skin, and skin is layered, right? So it's really about creating more layers. Also, depending on the product that you're using, sometimes you don't want that texture to be so prevalent at the top, but you still want the effect of it, and so underpainting helps you to do that. So there's a lot of reasons. And also it just helps to like amplify that shape throughout the application. I'm sorry, I don't know where you are. Okay, it helps to just really seal in that shape all throughout the application.
Hello, big fan. I had a question. I noticed you haven't used any powders on her, and I was just wondering, how do you keep the application so like matte but radiant at the same time without like?
That's a great question, and again, it depends on the person's skin. I think using my fingers really helps because just if you think of the concept of applying lotion to your body, apply lotion to your body when you get home today with a sponge, then apply it with a brush, and then apply it with your hand. What do you think is going to be the difference?
It's going to melt a little bit better when you do it with your
so when it
hands.
melts into the skin, A, I'm using a lot less product, and B, I can be a lot more strategic with how I set, because now it's still looking like skin, so I'm going to like maybe just mattify in here to make more contrast on the cheek. It's also like what you mix your products with. If I have somebody that's super, super shiny, I may like infuse, we have a product in our collection called Smooth Effects, which really mattifies. And maybe I'll use that underneath the foundation, or I'll put the powder completely underneath the foundation before I even start doing the makeup, so that it's going to be set all the way throughout. Does that help answer your question? Kinda?
Hi, Danessa. One more question. How do you avoid showing of the bags underneath a client's eyes?
Well, here's the thing. I think as makeup artists, we kind of like trick ourselves into thinking that we can solve everything. And we try to use makeup to like cover everything. But if I have a bump, in order for that bump to go away, the makeup needs to be as high as the bump. I'm never going to want to use that much makeup, right? Instead, I want to just think about how can I take the attention away from it, right? So how can I take the attention away from like bumps and lines and things like that? I can go back to my basic concepts. You know, reflection amplifies. So if there's something that I don't want amplified, I'll make it what? Yeah, I'll just make it matter. So you do your best to correct, but it doesn't make sense to put so much makeup on somebody unnecessarily because they have a bump. And now you have to create that look of so much makeup everywhere else. I think it's much more beautiful to just keep them looking more natural and keep their skin looking like skin. And just address those areas using your basic concepts. Taking attention away from that texture. Look all the way up, sweetie. Just by mattifying those areas.
Danessa.
Yes.
This is Elise again, over here on the floor.
Hey, hey.
Hey. When you do have someone with oily skin and you put powder on first,
Okay.
to help them, to help the foundation set or the underpainting or what have you, how do you adjust your technique as far as finger tapping, brushes with that oily skin with the powder on top?
So everything else I'm just doing the exact same way, because at the very end I'm going to address mattifying the skin as well. So that's just going to help me very close to the base level of their skin absorb any oils. You can also take your powder and put it directly into your foundation. Have you done that before? So it has to be a very thin powder, obviously, but you can put it right into your foundation, which is going to mattify throughout your entire process as well. And then, of course, you can use mattifying actual agents. Maybe instead of oil, I'll use a mattifying moisturizer. I'll make those adjustments as I go through. So throughout the entire application, I'm just considering the skin and making my choices for the products that I use accordingly. Make sense?
Hi, Danessa. I'm with Alice.
Hey, hey.
Hi. I have a question about how you prep the skin when you have a client that has super dehydrated skin so that you avoid the makeup sitting on top of it.
Yeah, so you see what I did in the beginning. Before I started, she was sitting here with a mask on. Like, you have to, as much as possible, because we don't go home with them, we have to, as much as possible, depending on the time you have allotted, address those things through how you prep the skin. So all throughout my entire application, I use oils, right? So if I have somebody with super dry skin, not only am I going to give them a mask, but I'm not going to use dry things. I'm not going to use a matte formula in the foundation. I'm going to keep thinking about that idea of the skin being super dry, and I'm continue to hydrate them throughout the process. And I'm also not going to use lots of powders. So let's say if I was going to do a look that's illuminating, maybe I'll avoid powders and use more of my oils and balms to do that instead. So it's just making those adjustments in the products that you're using accordingly based on the model that you're working with or the client that you're working with. That's a good question. Okay, let's see, turn this way. All right, see, that was like the Grim Reaper walk. All right, so I'm gonna hurry. So I'm gonna do this, and now I'm gonna go in and do the actual eye. So this is just all a backdrop.
Hello, Danessa.
Hi, I'm not gonna look at you because
Okay.
I
That's
won't
fine.
finish, but I'm listening, I promise.
When it comes to contouring and shaping the nose, for someone that has a more prominent bridge, it's easier to actually contour and create that shape. But if someone has maybe a larger nose or a wider, flatter nose, how do you approach that contour?
I think for me, it's more about just creating contrast on the bridge instead of trying to like go down the sides of the nose and shade everything away, because sometimes that looks even more unnatural. So it's just really creating the contrast at the bridge of the nose is mainly the way that I would approach that instead. Because again, it's really all about contrast. It's about tricking the eye to look at certain things. And so it's much easier. Selena, do me a favor, I don't have my glasses. It's much easier to address those types of things. I think I found it. Is this cream? Okay. Sorry. I always do makeup without my glasses because I'm dumb. So, all right. So right now what I'm mixing on my palette is 2 shades of Color Fix and 2 different textures. So I'm using Blackout and I'm using Obsidian together. So it's 2 different blacks and 2 different textures. And I'm just going to go right in and get this going. Now the reason why I love using Color Fix to do things like this because I know it's going to set. And then I can go right on top of it and do things like create a glossy eye, which is like my favorite thing to do right now. So I'm using a brush, a lip brush right now because I don't want to diffuse this color. I just want to see it in all of its intensity.
Hi, Danessa.
Hi.
So I have a question for if you have a client with really sensitive eyes, like they're blinking and eyes are watering and going crazy. How do you handle that situation without getting
You
the
kind of
makeup?
just have to play with it. I think a lot of times we don't let models breathe. Don't judge me right now because I need to finish. Breathing is important. And when we're working around the eyes, we have to create the space for them to blink and to breathe. And that helps eliminate a lot of the tearing. If I'm doing somebody who has super sensitive eyes, I'm always using waterproof products because that helps. And then I'll just do it in stages. Like if I'm doing a liner, I just do little dashes instead of trying to go through the whole eye. You just have to make adjustments like in a common sense way based on the model. But when people have watery eyes, they have watery eyes. So it's not like we can change that. So we only can change like how we approach it, the products that we use, and the technique that we use to minimize it as much as possible.
Danessa, I have a quick question.
Go for it.
I know you have the vision creams in a set. Can you also do the color fix in a set?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
The vision creams that you have, you made them in a set, or you can just buy 2 of the boxes.
Oh, you want me to create some packages? She's
Yes,
like,
for the
I'm
color
focused on me
fix.
right now. There's a few things I want to buy. Can you make a deal right now?
Well, I'm just saying in the future, will you ever do it for the color fix?
Because you asked, actually, you're like the third person that asked me that today. So for the holiday, I'm going to do something special.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, just blending out demarcation lines. And while this eye is setting, I'm going to add a few more touches to the skin. And you can continue to ask me questions. You see, I'm just changing the brush just based on how much I want the color to spread.
Hi, Danessa.
Hello, my love.
I just wanted to see, is there anything that you would recommend for an artist, like an aspiring artist, to kind of pick up and read that kind of inspired you as far as helping develop your artistry?
I think doing things that have nothing to do with makeup. Because how can you get inspired? Sometimes we confuse inspiration with looking at other artists that we like, right? But then what happens is now we're trying to just do makeup like somebody else, right? So what I found is attraction powder. What I found is if I do things that have nothing to do with makeup, like go to the museum or just get really happy. I know that sounds weird. I'm my most creative. And I look at things like food, travel, everything that has nothing to do with makeup, because then it helps you look at color different. You look at textures differently. I think only looking at makeup kind of limits your perspective. I also think like having play dates, and so many artists don't pick up makeup until they have to work. And that's doing a huge disservice because you never get a chance to play and learn your kit differently. So I just have lots of play days. As you notice, I just take the time to play more. And I force myself to do something different every time. Use a product in a different way. I was just at an event where I learned so much more about color fix, and I made the product. The way that people use it, like everyone's using it as concealer, they're using it as like hydrating underneath the eyes, mixing it, concealer, all kinds of things that I never even thought about because they just play. So just those play days will make a difference. So right now I'm using the light powder in Attraction. And this is very close to her skin tone, as you can see. But I just want to get it right here at the tops of her cheek just so we can bring all the attention there. And I'm just going over those same places that I went earlier. Absolutely. You can use it as blush. You can use it in your foundation as foundation. We're also going to be launching, I'll tell you, it's a secret, but not anymore, all skin tones of Color Fix. Since people use it so much for complexion, it's going to be available in skin tones. Another S140 brush.
Hi, Danessa.
So I'm using the S140 brush. Who said this is the Cosette S140 brush. I love this brush. Right now I'm using Evolution powder just to add some contrast by taking the shine away from areas that are where I want you to focus. Somebody had a question with the mic.
Yes.
Go for it.
Do you have any tips for covering up facial hair on women?
Yes, I think you can't cover them because you just make them more apparent with makeup. So I would recommend you using the Dermaflash. The Dermaflash. You guys heard of Dermaflash? I did a story. I wanted that so badly because it just looked so interesting to me. And I shaved one side of my face with it and started crying. I was like, this is why I'm single. Because it literally looked like two different people. You gotta get the hair off. Even if I'm doing like a major job, like a campaign, I'm always like taking care of the hair first because the makeup just sits on top of it. So yeah, you can't cover it. It just becomes more and more apparent. Number 5. Okay. This is Evolution Powder Shade 5. I'm just using it to strengthen the contours. Diesel Glaze, can you get from me? So that Dermaflash, you can use it every week. It's pretty amazing. You can use it right on set. It's not painful. You don't feel anything. And the hair grows back the same. So I'm just kind of mimicking exactly what I did with everything else, right? Going in with this deeper tone powder. This is Evolution Powder Shade 5. And you see how Evolution Powder still, it doesn't make it so super matte that it's contrasty. That was the reason for it, because you want to be able to mattify and still have it look like skin. Say that again? This is the S140 brush that I'm using right now.
What's your opinion on a bold lip paired with a bold eye?
I didn't hear your question, I'm sorry.
What's your opinion on a bold lip paired with a bold eye?
On what?
A bold lip paired with a bold eye.
I say do whatever you want, but it all depends on what the focus is. So like if the focus, if it's for someone else and they're selling eyelashes or selling eyeshadow and you do a bold lip and a bold eye, then you kind of take the attention away from what the point of focus is. So it's about being strategic based on what the job is, right? Or what it's for. All right, I'm gonna gloss her lid now. I'm gonna use Color Fix in Diesel. And can I have the cap? Diesel is a black glaze. Okay. All right. And I'm just gonna go right on top here. We have a flat brush. Let's use this thing. Okay, thanks. I'm gonna use a big one since this is a big smoky eye.
Hi, Danessa. My
Hi.
name is India. I'm right here in front.
Hey,
Hi.
hey.
I was just wondering what made you decide to create your own makeup line?
What made me decide? Because there were things that I wanted to do that I couldn't with the tools that I had in front of me. And then also I found that especially when it came to skin tones and finding products that work for everyone, can I have the cap? I was finding that it was difficult for me to create the same types of effects on deeper complexions. So I wanted to make sure that I created things that work for everybody, every skin tone, every age. And as an artist, when I started, I was so super broke. I mean, my face might be next to broke in the dictionary. I had to really make S140, S185. I have one, thanks. I had to really like make every product work to its max. And so that's where my eye really went to having multi-purpose products. And so my line is basically like that. Like everything is multi-purpose. It's highly pigmented, high concentrated formulas. They're really built to last. If you've ever bought it in light powder, you can just ask anybody to bury you with it. And I promise you, you'll still have some left because it's never going to run out. I just wanted to create makeup that I wanted to use in my artistry. And then we'll add a little, can you help me? I'm obsessed with swim caps too, FYI. Don't ask me why. Okay, can you clip that there for me? Oh, wait, fix this. Just pull it over. Over the hair, over the edge here. Okay.
Hey, Danessa.
I'm listening.
What are your thoughts on the best way to market ourselves and kind of push forward in our individual freelance business?
Well, what I always say is you have to, everything that you do is going to attract, right? So if there's a very specific kind of work that you're trying to attract, you need to do that, whether somebody's paying you to do it or not, right? And not do the things that you don't like, because you're going to attract that too. So whatever you show to the world, you're going to keep bringing more of that to you. So I would say focus on the things that you want, focus on the type of work you want to be doing, and create that work. So social media is a really easy way to do that. Like, you can wake up in the morning, do a look, open your eyes, sweetie, and post it, and people from all over the world will see it. Like right now, I think I spend more time internationally than here in the United States because of social media. So use the tools that you have available to you. And it's not always about somebody having paid you to do something. It's about you having the intention to create the career that you want and demonstrating that on a regular and consistent basis. So even if you're not working, you need to be doing makeup every day and showing that, even if it's on yourself. It doesn't matter. We can't bring things to you that you're not actively creating yourself, right? So rule number 1, do makeup all the time. And rule number 2 is to show as many people as you possibly can the work that you're doing. This is Delium 7, I think that's a 30. It's just an angled fan brush. Okay. And I'm just going to add a little impact to the inner corner of the eye with Love Story Metals and the lip palette. And I'll add a little bit of nudeness to her lip, and then we'll be done. Any final questions? Because I'm sure that an alarm is about to go off saying your time is up.
Hi, Danessa.
Where are you? Hey, hey.
If your focus was the lips, what would you have done differently with the eyes?
I would not have made it. So my attention now, because I made it black and glossy, my focus is on everything that's black and shiny. So here, here, and here, right? If I wanted the focus to go to the lip, maybe I would have added this finish that this cap has and that this has in a block of color just on the lip and neutralize the whole eye, because then the attention is going to go there. Does that make sense? So we have the power to tell somebody where we want them to look and what we want them to see. I'm just adding a little something in the corners there. This is called Love Story in the inner corners of the eye. And how can you apply it to me to be an assistant? So the young lady behind me, she hates this part because that's her job. But all you have to do is send an email to her. And her email is selena@danessamyricksbeauty.com. Selena. You're going to be flooded. All right, and I'm just going to be using the Luxe Cream palette. This is the nudist palette. And just to give her just a nice nude lip.
Hey, I have a question. First, I want to say I love you so much. But as a freshman in college, would you suggest freelance makeup artists to go to school and become licensed, or to continue to come to classes like this?
Well, that's a very interesting question. But I was self-taught, and a lot of the artists that I admire were also self-taught. So I don't think you have to go to school, but you know that better than anybody. If you are somebody that really needs structure, and you want to know like what all the rules are and be very clear, then I would definitely say go to school, right? But what I found is that once you figure out the kind of makeup that you want to do, you should follow those people that do that and go to like little workshops like this. Like if you want to do makeup like Sam, or if you want to do makeup like I don't know, like Nikki or whomever, then let them tell you directly what they're doing. I mean, you know what I mean? So you have an opportunity to curate your education, which is something that wasn't available for me at all. when I started doing makeup. Like, there wasn't any shows like this. Your only opportunity was to go to a formal school or to apprentice with somebody. But now there's information everywhere. So I think take advantage of everything. Yeah.